The night I went to the city cemetery was not about creating a ghost story. I am just a sound engineer who records natural ambient sounds for documentary projects. The creak of old wooden doors, the rustle of the night wind through the leaves, and that absolute silence away from the noise of the city. That night, it was around 2 in the morning. There was a light fog, reducing visibility, and a drizzle had just started. I had a high-sensitivity microphone with me, a voice recorder, and an old brass compass. I walked toward the oldest section of the cemetery, that dark corner with family vaults dating back to the 1800s. My goal was simply to put on my headphones and record the metallic howl of the wind. However, the moment I put the headphones over my ears, I heard a high-pitched static that normal human ears could not catch. It was like a radio frequency. You know, that deep white noise when you hit an empty channel. The decibel meter on the device spiked slightly. I looked at the screen. Not a single leaf was moving outside, but the microphone was catching an intense sound wave. I took out a small wooden board and that old brass compass from my bag, just out of curiosity. Testing those urban legends I had heard since high school, I set up a simple session arrangement. In the middle of that static coming from my headphones, I whispered softly into the microphone, "Is anyone there?" For the first 5 seconds, there was only the sound of the wind. Then, a sound came through my headphones that made a cold liquid run down my spine. From within the static, a deep feminine whisper slowly detached itself. "You can hear us, can't you?" I almost dropped the recording device in my hand. This was not an ordinary wind frequency. This was the voice of someone, blowing directly into the microphone. My heart began to beat as if it would burst through my chest. My logic told me this was a signal leaking from a nearby radio transmitter, but that dark curiosity inside me stopped me from leaving. The red light of the recording button was flashing like a heart in the dark. I leaned a little closer to the microphone and asked with a trembling voice, "What is your name? Why are you here?" The voice in the headphones this time did not belong to a single person. It was as if multiple people were talking at the same time, in different tones. "We forgot our names long ago, but you know, you do not belong here." Right at that moment, a slight vibration spread from under the wet grass I was standing on. The needle of the brass compass began to spin wildly on its own. The wind stopped, all at once. There was such an absolute silence that I started hearing my own heartbeats through the microphone in my headphones. The whispers from the headphones suddenly became faster and more complex. Hundreds of voices, overlapping each other. Some crying, some laughing, some praying in an incomprehensible language. I remembered the most fundamental rule taught when summoning spirits. You can never leave without closing the session. If you leave the door open, whatever the voice belongs to comes with you. I shouted into the microphone, "I am closing this session. Do not come near me." But the voice from the headphones echoed directly inside my head this time. "You opened the door, and we are already behind you. When you feel someone behind you, your body tells you to run." But I could not turn around. I just threw the headphones off my head and left my equipment scattered on the ground, running toward the cemetery gate. The dirt path was slipping under my feet. I could hear those footsteps behind me, heavy and rhythmic, footsteps stepping on the wet grass. When I reached the iron gate of the cemetery, I barely pulled my car keys out of my pocket. I jumped into the driver's seat and locked the doors. When I started the engine, I did not dare to look in the rearview mirror. I stepped on the gas and got away from that cursed cemetery as fast as I could. It was past 3 in the morning when I got home. I locked the door, turned on all the lights, and collapsed onto the sofa in the living room. I took a deep breath. It passed, I thought. It was just an illusion, a panic attack. But then, I noticed my bag. That black leather bag I thought I left on the ground while running was now standing on the table in the living room. A faint static sound was coming from inside it. The recording device was still working, and its red light was flashing. From the speaker on the device, those muffled and whispering voices began to spread into the room. "We like your house, Arthur. Now we will let you end the session. Turn off the lights." The coldness behind me stabbed straight from my back into my spinal cord, like a knife. "Turn off the lights." That voice was not reverberating in the living room. It was echoing as if directly from the bones inside my skull. I could not take my eyes off that small black recording device on the table. The digital wavelengths glowing green on the screen were making peaks far beyond normal human speech. Sharp, irregular lines, darting left and right. I pressed the power button on the device. It did not turn off. The screen turned red, and seconds started counting backward. 0:03, 0:02, 0:01. Right at that moment, all the light bulbs in the house blew out at the same time, with the sound of broken glass falling onto the parquet. The room was plunged into pitch darkness. Only the faint yellow light of the street lamp leaking through the window slightly illuminated the room, and I saw the thing standing in front of that yellow light, right behind my table, a few steps away from the sofa I was sitting on. A silhouette was standing. It was in human form, but it was so tall that its head almost touched the ceiling. Its shoulders were low, its arms were drooping down at an abnormal length on both sides of its body. Where its face should have been, there was only a deep, dark void, just like that void blowing into the microphone at the cemetery. I could not move. My chest tightened. My lungs refused to take in air. The silhouette took a step toward me. With every step it took, not the sound of breaking wood came from the parquet floor, but the rustle of wet dirt and dried leaves. It had brought the cemetery inside my house. It slowly leaned down. It brought its face, that smooth and pitch black surface, right to the level of my eyes. It had no mouth, but that feminine whisper was heard right next to my ear again. "You are not alone. We are your voice now." The phone in my pocket suddenly started vibrating. There was no caller ID. Only my own name was written on the screen. With trembling fingers, I opened the phone and brought it to my ear. The voice coming from the other end of the call was my own voice, but it was forming sentences I had recorded yesterday. Sentences I had never said before. Do not turn on the lights, Arthur. If you turn on the light, they will see you completely. To end the session, you must make a sacrifice. The phone slipped from my hand and fell to the floor. At that moment, I realized that dark silhouette was not alone. All the shadows in the living room had started moving. The shadow next to the bookshelf, the shadow in front of the window, other silhouettes gliding from the darkness of the hallway. They were all slowly surrounding me. I closed my eyes. I thought of that brass compass and the microphone at the cemetery. If I caught the sound through them, what would end the sound? Was that device again? I lunged blindly toward the table. My foot tripped on broken glass pieces. I fell to the ground, but my hand hit the recording device on the table. I grabbed the device. With all my strength, I pressed the delete all button on the device and the audio input jack. At the same time, I screamed without opening my eyes. The recording is over. The session is closed. Silence is returning. I threw the device passionately against the concrete wall in the living room. The sound of plastic and electronic parts exploding filled the room. The memory card inside broke in two. A moment of absolute silence occurred. The sound of the wind in the street stopped. The rustle of leaves stopped. I slowly opened my eyes. All the silhouettes in the room had disappeared. Only the smell of dirt and a damp cold remained in the middle of the room. I took a deep breath. My phone screen on the floor was still glowing. When I looked at the screen, the call was still ongoing. Duration, 47 o'clock. I brought it back to my ear. From the phone this time. It was not mine, but a man's voice, whispering in a foreign language. Next Friday, you will receive a new audio recording. The call duration counter on the phone's screen was advancing, not like a timer, but like a time bomb, counting down. 47 to 01, 47 to 02, 47 to 03. Those green numbers glowing on the screen were my only light source in the pitch-black living room. That foreign and deep man's voice coming from the other end of the call had turned the cold air in the room into a tangible mass. Next Friday, you will receive a new audio recording. The phone froze in my hand. I could not pull my ear away from the receiver, as if that frequency was connecting me to itself on a cellular level. In the background, right behind that foreign voice, other sounds began to leak in. The rhythmic beeping sounds of a hospital monitor, the wheezing coming from the lungs of a person breathing heavily, and then a very familiar metallic door creak. I knew that door creak. This was the creak of the basement door of my old childhood home, where I had not been for years. The voice recorder might have been shattered on the wall. The memory card might have been broken in two, but those sounds were not coming from the device. The sounds were leaking from beyond time and space, directly from where that dark entity on the other end of the line was located. I scanned the living room with my eyes. The broken pieces of the voice recorder I threw at the wall were scattered on a patch of wet dirt on the floor. From inside that dirt, I saw small thread-like black roots coming out and spreading in a spiral shape between the parquets, as if the cemetery was sprouting upward from the floor of my house. I took a step toward the window in the living room. I wanted to look at the street, to see that a normal living world still existed outside. I slowly pulled the curtain aside. Under the yellow light of the street lamp, a car was standing in the middle of the empty asphalt. My car. I saw someone sitting inside. The figure in the driver's seat slowly raised its head and looked up 3 floors, right at the window where I was standing. Its eyes, glowing like a flashlight beam, pierced through the darkness. That figure was me. I was the one down there. I was the one at the window. And the voice on the phone was also me. The line suddenly cut off. Beep, beep, beep. The street lamp flickered and went out. The car below and the silhouette inside completely disappeared into the darkness. The phone screen went black. Now there was only a single sound in the living room. Right behind me, a small, light laugh, made with my voice, coming from the darkness of the hallway, and my last sentence echoing in my ears. You started the session, Arthur. A pause. Silence is no longer an option.